The story begins by revealing that Gray had become the most powerful king in the world. However, without warning, his life comes to an end, and he is reborn in a medieval world. As soon as he opens his eyes, still a baby, he sees two smiling faces, his new parents. Their eyes overflow with affection and happiness. Both comment on how the newborn son resembles them and don't hide their excitement about the arrival of little Arthur. Reynolds, the father, immediately decides to name him Arthur and tries to get the baby to call him Daddy. Alice, the mother, laughs but reminds her husband that the boy is still too young for that. While the two play with their son, Arthur watches them with suspicion. He doesn't understand who these people are or why they are so sure they're his parents. If what they say is true, it means he really died and is now living another life, but with all the memories from the previous one. Lying down, he tries to accept that, even after winning countless battles and conquering everything, he now finds himself trapped in a fragile and incapable body. This situation makes him extremely uncomfortable, especially when he needs to do something so simple and at the same time so embarrassing, like burping. Despite this, Arthur doesn't feel angry about the life he has now. His new parents take care of him with dedication, but even so, he doesn't feel completely well. He doesn't like the idea of wearing diapers and lives with a constant feeling that he might be in danger. His only instinct for defense is to clench his fists tightly. Reynolds notices this and is amused when he puts his finger in his son's hand, thinking the squeeze is a sign of affection. When trying to move and squeeze the finger harder, Arthur ends up overdoing it and soils himself, making Alice have to clean him. He feels so embarrassed that he nearly cries. He wanted to believe it was just a strange dream, but he already understands that this is the reality he'll have to deal with from now on. Amid all this, something unexpected happens. Arthur witnesses his father using magic to increase his strength. Later, he also sees his mother using magic to heal him. This leaves him deeply intrigued, as in his previous life, he had never encountered anything like it. He wants to understand how magic works, but he knows he still needs to grow first. Shortly after, Reynolds enters a forest and defeats a beast with the help of magic. Then, he is visited by some friends who will play important roles later in the story. Meanwhile, Arthur, still unable to do much, watches everything around him, absorbing every detail. For him, knowledge has always been a powerful weapon, and now would be no different. When Reynolds returns from the hunt, Arthur wonders if he's now in a place where people live armed. If that's the case, this world is probably much more dangerous than it appears. He concludes that he needs to find a way to gain power as soon as possible if he wants to survive and adapt. He still has many questions he can't ask, but even so, he begins to find joy in the simple moments with his parents. In his old world, he couldn't even sleep peacefully. Someone was always trying to take his life. Now, living with safety and affection, he begins to get used to this new reality. Time passes, and after several days, or maybe weeks and months, Arthur learns to crawl. Soon he goes to a mirror to see what his face looks like. He gains more control over his body and starts sneaking out of the crib whenever his parents aren't around. His favorite destination is the library. There, he grabs a curious book to learn more about this world. He discovers that he's on the continent of Dicathen, divided into 3 great kingdoms: Darv, where the dwarves live; Elenoir, an elven kingdom hidden deep within the forest; and Sapin, land of the humans, where he is now. He learns that this world is also ruled by a monarchy, but unlike the previous one, where the throne could be taken by force, here power is inherited. With this basic information, Arthur tries to understand magic. He grabs a specific book on the subject, curious to know how everything works. As he reads it, he realizes how technologically superior his old reality was. The book explains that the magical energy of this world is called mana. Only 1 in 100 people is born with it, and this energy is passed down from generation to generation. There are 2 main ways to use it: augmentation, which enhances physical capabilities, and conjuring, which allows one to create and manipulate mania externally. With this, Arthur understands that his mother is a conjurer. He also discovers that each person born with mana possesses a magic core, normally accessed during puberty. By mastering this core, a person can become a mage. For Arthur, the concept resembles the Kai he used before. He even tries to activate it, but the moment he starts to concentrate, Alice picks him up, thinking he got dirty. And she was right. While she changes him, he feels trapped in such a fragile body and reaffirms to himself that one day he will become strong again. Later, Alice writes down details of her son's development and shows satisfaction with his progress. But there's something that worries her. Arthur still hasn't smiled at them. Just thinking about it makes her heart ache. Looking out the window, she sees Reynolds trying to teach Arthur the basics of swordplay. The father is excited about the progress, but Alice finds it not funny at all. She gets annoyed when she finds out he's teaching something so dangerous to such a young child. Arthur watches the argument closely, using the moment to try to better understand the relationship between men and women in this world. He even starts to wonder if here, women have more power. Later, Alice takes him to the market, and Arthur is enchanted by everything he sees. Each new item seems like an opportunity to learn. Now he understands why babies often look around so much. In particular, he's fascinated to see magic being used in public. On the way back home, he starts to doze off, but before that, he mentally thanks for being beside such special people. Arriving home, Alice comments on how happy she is when he escapes the crib to read, and how curious he is during market visits. She thinks this comes from Reynolds, and fears that, in the future, Arthur will want to go out into the world. Even so, she hopes he'll live a calmer life. At another moment, Arthur sees his father training magic and gets excited at the idea of being able to learn from him. Initially, he finds his father's display too simple, but when Alice appears and encourages him to pay more attention, Reynolds unleashes a much more impressive power. Arthur concludes that he is an augmenter. Excited, he wants to try something too, but is interrupted by Alice, who says it's already bedtime. When taken to the room, he sees a book on the shelf and starts crying, pointing to it. With a convincing little face, he manages to convince his mother to let him read a little longer. While reading, he starts trying to channel mana throughout his body and direct it to a single point, the beginning of the creation of a magic core. When the parents think he's already asleep, an explosion occurs inside the house. Reynolds instinctively protects Alice but ends up burned on the back. Once they make sure they're okay, they remember Arthur and run to where he was. Upon arriving, they're shocked. Arthur is floating, surrounded by intense energy. The two are paralyzed, just watching as their son slowly begins to descend. But when he lands, part of the ceiling collapses. Before something worse happens, the parents act quickly and save him. It was close. After that, everyone cries. Arthur, moved by the situation, realizes that Alice and Reynolds would do anything to protect him, something he never experienced in his previous life. The scene shifts to a moment from Arthur's past. In that previous life, he was remembered as the most powerful king of all. One of his servants was caught trying to take his life, and according to the laws of that time, the punishment would be immediate execution without any right to defense. However, the royal council decided to follow another path, to send the man back to his country of origin along with his entire family. They knew very well that the fate that awaited them there would be even worse than death. Desperate, the aggressor pleaded for compassion. He asked Gray to at least spare his wife and son, but Gray, without showing any sign of compassion or hesitation, killed both before the man's eyes. He did not do it out of revenge. In his mind, that was an act of mercy. It was clear proof of how relentless he could be. It is hard to believe that Arthur, that boy with a calm and gentle appearance, had once been someone capable of making such cold and ruthless decisions. Now, in the present, Arthur spends some time with his father, Reynolds, who decides to gift him a pair of combat gloves identical to his own. But Arthur refuses the gift. He still prefers to continue training with his wooden sword. In his opinion, with the body he currently has, the gloves would limit his movements too much and put him at a disadvantage. Reynolds does not insist on the matter of the gloves. He simply smiles and begins his own warm-up. But today's training would be different. During the combat, Arthur reveals that he has learned to reinforce his sword with mana. Surprising Reynolds, he disarms him for the first time. It was Arthur's first victory against his father, leaving Reynolds completely without reaction, impressed by his son's sudden progress. Later, during dinner, Reynolds announces that it is time to find a real instructor for Arthur. He recognizes that if he continues to be solely responsible for his training, he will end up limiting the boy's growth. Alice, Arthur's mother, does not agree. She knows that this means he would have to leave the house in the hills and go to the city, even though he is so young. But Reynolds insists. He explains that Arthur is already capable of enhancing any object with magic and states that this decision is necessary for his future. Dinner turns into a discussion. To resolve the situation, Arthur suggests that they both accompany him to the city. Thus, Reynolds can find the ideal tutor for his son, and Alice can remain by the boy's side. The proposal is accepted immediately. They begin packing their things to move. Shortly after, Reynolds' former companions, a group of adventurers known as the Twin Horns, appear to escort the family to the city. Arthur introduces himself to the group and talks with their leader, Adam. He mentions that they have seen each other before, although he thinks Arthur would not remember. But Arthur remembers perfectly. It was when the house exploded, and the group appeared to help rebuild everything. On that occasion, he discovered that his parents had already been part of the Twin Horns before settling in the hills. After that conversation, Angela arrives and hugs Arthur tightly, almost taking his breath away. Duran, the group's warrior, saves him by pulling him away. At that moment, Arthur notices a girl watching him from the top of the carriage. She is Jasmine, who merely stares at him without saying anything. Her gaze leaves him thoughtful. Shortly after, Helen approaches, shakes his hand, and introduces herself along with Jasmine. With everyone introduced, the journey to the city of Xyrus begins. During the trip, Arthur thinks about how that means of transport is outdated compared to his old world, where flying vehicles were common. Even so, he is not bothered. After all, he has his mother by his side throughout the journey. They make stops every day. At one of them, they are attacked by wild wolves. Arthur realizes for the first time how dangerous that world can be. Jasmine joins the fight using her daggers with impressive precision. Reynolds, Adam, and the others also join the battle and resolve everything quickly. Arthur, merely observing, feels inspired by them and begins to want to be part of that kind of adventure. That night, the group celebrates with a banquet. Arthur notices that his mother is not eating. She says that she is satisfied, but he feels that something is off. Then, she notices a wound on Reynolds' arm and gets up to heal it. The atmosphere changes. Everyone becomes alert, taking care that no one sees them. It becomes clear to Arthur that his mother's healing ability is something rare and very valuable in that world. He now understands why his parents lived in isolation, to keep Alice's power away from prying eyes. After dinner, Adam invites Arthur to a duel. He wants to see with his own eyes what Reynolds had told him about the boy's talent. The other members get excited and surround the two to watch. Arthur, at only 4 years old, wonders why no one seems worried about fighting a child. But he accepts the challenge. It is the first time he would face someone other than his own father. And Adam uses a real spear, albeit covered with bandages. As soon as the fight begins, Adam reinforces his weapon with mana. Arthur does the same, but goes even further. He channels mana into his feet to increase his speed. In an instant, he approaches Adam even before he can react. Then he outmaneuvers Adam and reappears behind him, surprising everyone with his speed and precision. The fight continues, but the physical difference between them is clear. Adam, with a single blow, sends him flying. Arthur feels on his skin how his body is still too light for direct combat. Before hitting the ground, Angela softens his fall with wind magic. Duran reprimands Adam for having gone too hard. Adam apologizes, saying that he was caught off guard by the boy's technique and couldn't contain his excitement. He wonders what kind of training Reynolds gave his son to make him so strong. Meanwhile, Jasmine watches Arthur intently. She wants to understand how he did that. She implores him to teach her. From her expression, Arthur realizes that she won't give up until she learns. The next morning, the group resumes the journey. At one stop, Adam starts teaching Arthur how to use the spear, while Reynolds has him train with strenuous exercises. Later, Helen teaches him to use the bow, and Arthur learns quickly. After that, he begins to train Jasmine, who also proves to be quite talented. That night, while Arthur reads a book, he notices that Jasmine continues to watch him as if trying to understand what makes him so special. The next day, it is Arthur's birthday. Jasmine gives him a dagger as a gift, and even begins to explain how to use it, leaving the other girls surprised. Tired of childish games, Adam announces that it is time to leave. But before that, Alice calls Arthur, and he notices that she is not feeling well. He asks what is happening, but she says that everything is fine, even though he feels that it is not quite so. During the journey, the group is attacked by bandits. Everyone jumps out of the carriage and takes their positions. Arrows come from all sides, but Angela protects the group with a magical barrier. Arthur realizes that they are surrounded. The leader of the bandits orders that no harm be done to women and children, as he wants to sell them. The battle begins. Alicia, scared, tries to calm Arthur down. Before they are reached, Duran pushes the enemies away with an explosion, and Reynolds knocks down 2 of them with his fists. One of the bandits tries to attack Reynolds from behind, but Helen stops him with a precise arrow. Adam moves among the enemies with his spear, and Jasmine takes down several with her daggers. Still, there are many enemies. The group begins to tire. Eventually, Reynolds is thrown against the carriage and becomes unconscious. The leader of the bandits approaches Alice and Arthur. When the 2 run from the carriage, Reynolds awakens and asks them to get away. Even though he is injured, he insists that Arthur flee with his mother. He reveals that Alice is pregnant, explaining why she seemed ill. Arthur hesitates but eventually accepts. He takes his mother by the arm and starts to run. The leader orders for him to be stopped, but the members of the group intervene, clearing a path for them to escape. As he runs, Arthur recalls his past life. He once was someone who took lives without hesitation, but now he was fighting to avoid losing someone important. While running, he feels a presence coming from the mountains. He sees a man about to cast magic against them. Without thinking twice, he pushes his mother to protect her and is hit, falling down the mountain. During the fall, he decides that he will not go alone. He uses the dagger that Jasmine gave him, which has a rope attached, and throws it at the enemy. It catches on the man's leg, dragging him along. Meanwhile, Duran and Angela try to use magic to save him, but he is too far away. Arthur begins to reflect on everything as he falls, and his mother, from above, screams his name in despair. Tears roll down her face. Arthur, on the other hand, feels that he has fulfilled his duty to protect his family, even at the cost of his own life. He is sad that he will not be able to meet the brother who was to come, but he feels that he did what was necessary. Incredibly, Arthur survives the fall, but when he opens his eyes, he is faced with a gigantic and terrifying monster. The image of the creature in front of Arthur completely paralyzes him. He can't utter a single word. It feels like he was lured there on purpose, and with that, he tries to attack her. But her reaction is simple and unexpected. With a light touch, she pushes him away as if he were nothing. She assures him she poses no danger and calmly gets up, walking toward an unusual plant she cultivated by herself to pick magical fruits. Her intention is to feed Arthur, assuming he needs to recover as he is still injured. Her attitude leaves Arthur disoriented. It's hard to believe that a creature with such a threatening appearance is treating him with such care, almost like a maternal figure. Even so, he can't fully trust her. Something inside him suspects her intentions. But since he's in pain and can't even move, he gives in to emotion and starts crying. The creature promises Arthur she will answer everything he wants to know. So he asks his first question. He wants to know if his parents are okay. She responds that, although she cannot leave the cave, she used her spatial awareness to confirm that his family defeated all the bandits and left that place a few days ago. Arthur feels great relief knowing that his mother, father, and future sister are safe. He sincerely thanks her for saving his life. Not knowing how to address her, she finally introduces herself as Sylvia. But it's clear that Sylvia holds many secrets. In the following days, she continues caring for Arthur, offering him the same magical fruits which help his body fully recover. Over time, Arthur is able to walk again and feels the desire to return home. However, according to Sylvia, the region is still very dangerous, full of ferocious creatures and thieves, and he wouldn't last a single day on his own. Even so, Sylvia doesn't want to see him trapped there. She decides to find a way to help him leave, using the little magic still left in her body to open a dimensional rift. Meanwhile, Arthur spends his time training his sword skills, but he can't stop thinking about the mysteries surrounding Sylvia. Why is she being so protective of him? And what does that huge hole in her chest mean? Since she never talks about herself, these questions remain unanswered. After training, Arthur meditates to strengthen his mana, which catches Sylvia's attention. Curious, she decides to show him something even more interesting, a way to absorb mana from the environment while casting spells at the same time. She explains that the way people perceive mana, as something that needs to be gathered before being used, is limited. She says that beings like her can use and collect mana simultaneously, which prevents exhaustion. Sylvia also mentions that magical creatures can do this instinctively, as if it were breathing. Then she asks Arthur if he wants to learn this technique. He responds enthusiastically, saying yes, but before teaching him, she wants to know why. Arthur answers honestly. He wants this power to become stronger and, with it, destroy anyone who harms the ones he loves. The answer displeases Sylvia. She touches his forehead, saying he has failed. She refuses to teach something so valuable to someone consumed by hatred. Arthur argues that it's normal to feel anger toward enemies, especially after everything he went through in his past life as a king. Sylvia senses that darkness inside him and explains that causing pain to others cannot be the goal. After a pause, she apologizes for being harsh, but reminds him that the same hands capable of ending him were also the ones that touched him with tenderness. That is the lesson she wants to leave. It's better to act with kindness. Anger and violence only bring suffering. She saved his life with care and affection, and she doesn't want that gesture to be stained by negative feelings. When Arthur starts to understand what she's trying to convey, she asks him again, what will he do when he becomes powerful? Arthur, thinking of all the good moments he lived with his parents and friends, replies that he will use his strength to protect them. This time Sylvia smiles and approves. But elsewhere, nearby, atop a cliff, a different figure appears, someone who looks a lot like Sylvia. He is searching for her, as she disappeared from the kingdom where she lived. Then, we are taken to a moment from Arthur's past life. He is in his royal chambers. After waking up, he goes to the office of a parliament member. There, he admits that he only carries the title of king, since the real rulers are the parliament. In a world on the brink of collapse, with few resources and declining birth rates, Arthur believes his role is only to be a living weapon. The subordinate tries to comfort him with compliments, but Arthur leaves. Shortly after, he is mysteriously assassinated. When he tries to use the new power he received from Sylvia, memories of his previous life return. He remembers how he struggled to release the power of Kai. And now, with the new power, he feels completely overtaken by it. Once again, the question arises, what will he do with this strength? Suddenly, Sylvia pushes him against a rock. He doesn't understand what's happening. She, who protected him until now, is now hiding him. She asks him to stay there, safe, without fear. Inside the rock, Arthur feels immense energy. Another creature appears, with the same appearance as Sylvia. He found her thanks to the smell of blood. He demands she return with him. Sylvia refuses and is ready to fight to the end. When the battle begins, she reveals her true form. She is a powerful dragon. The creature warns her that this kind of power could end her life. But Sylvia is at peace with that fate. For her, every moment lived was worth it. Even if it means dying, she won't back down. The battle is intense. Arthur watches, helpless. The fight seems balanced until Sylvia uses her final move. She freezes everything around, traps the opponent, and opens the cave's entrance for Arthur to escape. When he leaves, he sees who she really is, a majestic dragon, and she tells him it's time to go. She says the power she gave him is for him to find his way back. She reinforces her hope that he will not be guided by anger. Arthur says he will use the power to protect those he loves. She smiles. She doesn't want him to follow a path of hatred. She wants him to share love with the world. Her words touch Arthur. Before leaving, she gives him a dragon egg and a feather, asking him to wrap the egg with it. As he touches it, immense energy flows through his body. Glowing lines appear on his arm, tearing his shirt. Sylvia admits she could have sent him away earlier. She knew how, but she liked his company. Having someone to talk to after so long was special. Arthur feels the same. He learned a lot from her. The farewell is painful. Arthur, in tears, feels like he failed for not being able to protect her. He remembers everything she taught him. Despite everything, she smiles. For her, her life had meaning. With a sincere smile, he says it doesn't matter what she is, dragon or monster. She is family. She smiles and jokes, saying he already has a mother. And he replies with something that deeply moves her. Then you are my grandmother. That word touches her in a special way. She cries. She asks him to say it again. He repeats it. Arthur holds the egg and the feather. The sky darkens. It's time to go. He doesn't want to leave her. He asks her to come with him. But there is no response. The opening disappears. Sylvia releases the seal and the opponent regains strength. She falls to the ground, motionless. He approaches, surprised that she's so weak. But it was all part of the plan. Sylvia opens her eyes and releases a mana explosion so intense that no one could survive. The entire cave trembles. The energy reaches the surface. Outside, Arthur continues on his path, still crying. Her voice echoes in the skies, asking him to remember the conversations they had. She understands he is sad, but asks that, even so, he tries to smile. Revenge must not guide his steps. And if it's hard, then he should move slowly, one step at a time. Arthur doubts himself, but she reminds him who he is. Gray, the most powerful king. He can do anything, and he must not use that power to carry pain. He must choose happiness. Arthur is speechless. She always knew who he really was. The moment is full of emotion. Her voice fades with the wind. Then, Arthur stores her egg in his backpack and prepares for his new journey. So, increasing the speed of his movements using mana, Arthur advanced through the Elsha forest, careful not to damage Sylvia's egg that he was carrying. Jumping from branch to branch as if he were Tarzan himself, he suddenly picked up the sound of human voices. Without hesitation, he approached, hoping he might be able to follow that group to the city where his family awaited him. However, as soon as he landed on a tree above them, he realized the situation was quite different from what he had imagined. Down below were 4 bandits, and they had kidnapped a young elf girl to sell her as a slave. Arthur immediately remembered a similar group he had faced days ago, men who had tried to capture him along with his mother. No doubt, these must be part of the same organization. A desire for justice ignited in his chest. Meanwhile, the kidnappers were pushing the elf girl into the cart and getting ready to leave. The scene revolted Arthur. Still, he forced himself to remember Sylvia's words and held back his fury, choosing to follow the cart stealthily until sunset. When the group stopped to camp, Arthur realized he had 2 options. He could keep following them safely until they reached a human city, but that would mean abandoning the elf girl to her fate. He knew he couldn't ignore it. He waited until midnight to act. The bandits were using horned wolves to pull the cart, and Arthur came up with a plan to destabilize the camp. He started throwing rocks at the animals, making them howl loudly and threateningly. Scared by the idea that the howls might attract dangerous predators, one of the bandits approached the wolves and started kicking them to try to silence them. Seeing the perfect opportunity, Arthur crept up to him. Reinforcing his hand with mana, he turned it into a living blade and quickly incapacitated the man. Then, he took the bandit's knife and eliminated the second kidnapper without hesitation. The third noticed something was wrong and tried to react, but Arthur was faster and struck his leg. In desperation, the man warned the group's leader about the attack. The leader, however, was not worried. To him, Arthur seemed like just another valuable piece of merchandise. Determined to capture him alive, he dropped his sword, reinforced his hands with mana, and moved in for hand-to-hand combat. Arthur dodged the first blow and tried to use his thread technique to hit the leader like he had in a previous fight. But the leader, more experienced in battle, saw through the trick and landed a powerful kick on Arthur, throwing him far away. Without giving him time to react, he grabbed the boy's leg, convinced it was the end. But for Arthur, it had barely begun. Using a fire spell, he burned the opponent's leg, making the bandit roar in rage. Now, the leader shouted that he would only sell the corpse of the annoying child to some sick collectors. While he gave in to his own hatred, Arthur took the chance to throw his knife using the thread technique, planting it right in the enemy's forehead and ending the fight in an instant. The third bandit, still alive, fell to his knees, begging for mercy and promising to change his ways. But Arthur knew those empty words all too well. He couldn't afford to leave witnesses, so he finished the job. Climbing into the cart, Arthur removed the blindfold from the elf girl's eyes and tried to calm her, assuring her that she was safe now. Even so, she was scared upon seeing his injured state. Understanding that children don't handle violence well, Arthur quickly covered the bandits' bodies and told a small lie. He said the bad men had died in an accident. Innocent, the girl believed him without question. After grabbing some useful supplies, Arthur was preparing to leave, but was stopped when the little elf held his hand, begging not to be left alone in that forest full of dangers. She said her parents had told her stories about tree ghosts that ate children, even if they were just legends to scare the young. With no other choice, Arthur decided to take her back home. The girl pointed south, saying her home was in that direction, the opposite way from where Arthur needed to go to reunite with his parents. When he asked how she ended up in that situation, the answer was simple. While playing, she followed some bugs and ended up getting lost. He wasn't surprised. He remembered his past life, recalling when he had also been imprisoned at the same age. He wouldn't allow her to go through something similar. As for the horned wolves, the girl asked to release them, explaining they would die if kept tied up. Though Arthur was reluctant, afraid they'd be attacked once freed, he simply watched as she untied their ropes and allowed the animals to return to the forest. Happy to have saved such a kind soul, Arthur renewed his resolve to protect her. The next day, they began their walk. At some point, Arthur asked her name, and the little elf replied with a smile, "Tessia." When she asked his name, he responded politely. As they walked, Arthur noticed she was probably hungry, so he had her sit down and gave her a bowl of food. Even without appetite, he explained it was important to eat to maintain strength. Memories of Sylvia came to mind. She used to say exactly that. Tessia wrinkled her nose, saying the food smelled weird. Arthur laughed internally. After everything they'd been through, she was still complaining? Typical kid. He tried to improve the taste by adding some leaves, but even then she made a face. To Arthur, food meant survival, not flavor. Watching the girl complain made him better understand what it means to be a child. She said she wanted something sweet, but under those circumstances, it was impossible. And so, they continued on their journey. Along the way, Tessia said her city was full of mana, and that she couldn't wait to awaken her own energy and study with her master. Arthur was surprised that she would have a mentor instead of attending a school system. Night fell, and he set up a tent for Tessia to rest. He heard the howls of the wolves he had freed and, worried, regretted not having killed them. Tessia called him into the tent, saying it was dangerous to stay outside, but Arthur preferred to keep watch. The girl insisted, saying her grandfather had taught her not to sleep in the same space as a boy, but she would make an exception that time and promised not to tell anyone. When Arthur still hesitated, she argued that if he stayed outside, people would see they were kids and they'd be more likely to be attacked. Tired, Arthur gave in and went inside. Inside the tent, Tessia talked about humans, saying they were perverted and had many wives. Arthur tried to explain that not all were like that, but she was already asleep. Soon after, he also fell asleep. The next day, they resumed the journey. Arthur suddenly felt an unbearable pain coming from his mana core, but said he was fine, so Tessia wouldn't worry. Even when she asked, he said he was fine. One of the horned wolves Tessia had saved brought a small catch as a gesture of gratitude for what they had done, and that night they ate delicious meat. The next day, Tessia asked to call him Artie. In response, he jokingly called her Your Highness, which annoyed her. She just wanted to feel closer, and Arthur, unaccustomed to friendships, was still learning how to deal with that. Further ahead, Tessia found a passage and called Arthur. Not really understanding, he held her hand and crossed to the other side. When he fell to the ground, exhausted, he was surprised. Soldiers appeared around them, pointing weapons at him. They said they had tracked the two of them there because they had used a teleportation portal. Before Arthur could react, he was restrained. Desperate, he called out to Tessia, only to see her standing there, unresponsive and expressionless. The guards look at Arthur with suspicion and demand to know who gave permission for a human to enter that sacred place. Not knowing what to say, Arthur turns his face toward Tessia, hoping she'll say something to get him out of that situation. But since she doesn't say anything, he feels a stab of disappointment. He thought he could trust her, even considered Tessia a friend. But now it seemed he was wrong. What he didn't know is that she was just frozen, not knowing how to act. She was just a child, scared under pressure. When the guards say they're going to take Arthur down, Tessia finally gathers courage and intervenes, saying he saved her life. Even so, the guards don't believe it. They claim Arthur must have done something to manipulate her mind and convince her of that. But before the situation gets worse, someone appears through the same magic portal. A man with an imposing yet calm appearance shows up and orders them to leave Arthur alone. It's Virion Erelith, the former king of Elenoir. He personally thanks Arthur for saving his granddaughter and reveals that Tessia is the kingdom's princess. Arthur is completely surprised. He never would have imagined Tessia was royalty. She had never acted in a way that gave that away during the time they spent together. Soon after, Tessia's parents, King Alduin and Queen Merial, arrive, relieved to see their daughter again after so many days of worry. While Merial checks to see if her daughter is okay, Alduin addresses Arthur, visibly uncomfortable, and asks what a human is doing there. Without thinking twice, he orders the soldiers to get rid of Arthur. Virion once again steps into the situation and says he was the one who told the guards to back off. Calmly, he explains that Arthur saved their granddaughter, even being a human, and that should be taken into consideration. Tessia supports what Virion said, begging her father not to hurt Arthur, and she suggests inviting him to the castle. The idea of a human crossing the castle gates clearly makes Alduin hesitate, but Tessia leaves her father no choice, and he eventually agrees. Then she runs to Arthur and says that if he goes with her, she'll share her favorite sweets with him. Meanwhile, Virion is intrigued by the power he senses in Arthur, and he says he needs to talk to him privately later. Arthur then follows Tessia, exploring the kingdom of Elenoir. The city is full of beauty, with buildings spread among the trees and beneath them. People live peacefully, away from conflict. But even so, everyone looks at Arthur curiously, wondering what a human is doing there. Despite everything, Arthur still can't forget the moment Tessia hesitated to help him. Why did she do that? And that serious expression on her face? These thoughts keep echoing in his mind, bringing a discomfort that's hard to ignore. He keeps observing everything around him cautiously, without letting his guard down. When they arrive at the castle, they are greeted by several elven maids. They exist to take care of everything Tessia needs, but today, Tessia wants to repay Arthur. She orders them to treat Arthur with the best possible hospitality and tells everyone he saved her life. When she notices that some maids still aren't fully convinced, Tessia declares that Arthur is one of the rare humans with a kind heart. Then she turns to Arthur and asks what he wants to do. Eat, play, have lunch, or maybe freshen up. But Arthur has another priority. Before anything else, he wants to talk to Tessia's parents about what happened in the forest. There's still a lot that remains unexplained. Everyone gathers in a room meant for serious conversations, but Tessia seems to be in a different mood and shows up bringing tea and snacks, as if it were a relaxing meeting. Alduin introduces himself to Arthur more formally, along with Merial and Virion. Arthur also introduces himself, saying he's just an ordinary child from a distant village in the kingdom of Sapin. He kneels respectfully, saying he never imagined a commoner like him would have the chance to be in the presence of royalty, much less sit in the same room. Alduin is surprised by the boy's manners and allows him to continue. Arthur then tells everything that happened since he got separated from his family. He doesn't lie, but also doesn't reveal everything, like his encounter with the mysterious Sylvia. When he reaches the part where he finds Tessia being taken by slave traffickers, the mood in the room changes. Alduin, as always, takes the opportunity to blame humanity, saying they're all savages. But Virion asks the question that really matters. How did a 5-year-old boy manage to defeat 3 adult slave traffickers? It certainly wasn't through talking. Arthur finally reveals that he's a mage and used his powers to save her. Alduin doesn't believe it, and the same guard from before interrupts again, saying this is all mind manipulation. Virion, who's been defending Arthur from the start, gets irritated with the disrespect and silences him. Tessia also speaks, saying she heard the traffickers saying they were going to sell her, recalling the horrible experience. Merial, moved, hugs her daughter tightly. Alduin finally realizes what his daughter went through. Then he turns to Arthur and says he believes him, thanking him for everything he did. Arthur takes the chance to explain why he asked for that meeting. He's separated from his family, and all he wants is to reunite with them in Sapin. Alduin is shocked. A human asking for help from elves? He replies that he would never help humans and that Arthur needs to find his way back alone. But Arthur is clever. He says that if they're not capable of repaying the favor he did, then they have no right to call humans savages because they'd be acting the same way. Virion calmly says Arthur got him with that. He agrees with Arthur and says his son fell into his own trap. Tessia also waits for her father's answer. With no way out, Alduin agrees. He tells Arthur there's a portal that leads to Sapin, but it can only be used once every 7 years. Since it was used recently, it won't be able to open again for 5 years. Arthur can't wait that long. He needs to see his parents soon. Alduin realizes this and says he'll send soldiers to escort him home. The journey will begin the next day. This brings relief to Arthur, but his mana core starts hurting again. He leaves the room and tries to relax with a bath. The pain doesn't go away. He clutches his chest, trying to understand what's happening and what he could do. He thinks of Sylvia, wondering what she would do in this situation. Then he decides to take a walk around the palace. The fresh air helps a bit with the pain. He thinks of his parents and feels an immense longing. He wonders if they're still alive, but soon concludes they're too strong not to be. When he looks up and sees Tessia with her parents, he wonders if his family will also receive him with such affection, or if they'll be angry for him being gone so long. These thoughts weigh heavily on a boy like him. Tessia runs up to him. Arthur teases her, calling her a spoiled princess and saying she should go enjoy time with her parents. But he opens up to her, saying he's afraid of how his parents will react. Tessia holds his face, amazed at how someone can be so silly. What kind of parents wouldn't be happy to see their son again? She's sure his parents are very worried. Suddenly, glowing flowers begin to fall from the sky. She smiles and explains what they are. Arthur watches and remembers the moment he thought she would betray him, realizing he only thought that because he's still ruled by the darkness inside him due to his past. Then he apologizes to Tessia and says he liked the flowers too. Arthur senses something dangerous coming toward Tessia and immediately counterattacks. To his shock, the one who launched the attack was Virion. Arthur asks why Virion is attacking his own granddaughter. But he just smiles, saying no one could get hurt by flowers. Arthur realizes he had done it to test him, and it worked. Now Virion believes he really took down the bandits. Tessia runs up, begging him not to hurt Arthur, but Virion replies that he's not intimidating anyone. He just found someone interesting for the first time and doesn't intend to let him go. Using magic, he makes Tessia sit and throws a wooden sword to Arthur. The boy immediately understands Virion's intention, and the fight begins. Arthur gives it his all, uses all his mana, but can't hit Virion, who is faster. When he tries a stronger attack, the sword breaks and a piece almost hits Tessia. But Arthur protects her. He decides to use magic. The power is immense, few would withstand it. But Virion repels the spell like it's nothing. After several attempts, Arthur finally hits Virion on the head. He's surprised, but instead of backing off, gets more excited to keep fighting. But Tessia gets up and pinches her grandfather, asking him to leave Art alone. Virion says Arthur isn't the child everyone thinks he is, and if anyone was intimidated, it was him. Arthur doesn't want that kind of fame. He says Virion is exaggerating, but then Virion makes a proposal. He wants Arthur to become his disciple. The idea doesn't seem bad, and Arthur starts to consider it. But remembering his parents and their worry, he thinks it's better to refuse. He explains everything to Virion, who then says there's a way to let his parents know he's safe without going personally. Arthur tries to understand better, but the pain returns to his mana core. This confirms Virion's suspicion. Arthur inherited a beast will. The only way to survive this is by becoming his disciple. Later on, Arthur finds himself completely paralyzed. His body doesn't respond, and his heart tightens as if something is crushing him from the inside. While trying to resist the pain, a dark and heavy energy begins to emerge from his chest. It transforms before him, taking the shape of a strange and menacing creature. Frightened, he closes his eyes, trying to understand if it was a representation of his anguish, or perhaps the weight of everything he carries. The creature approaches, ready to attack him, but then a soft voice echoes, calling his name. It's Tessia. Her voice brings an unexpected peace that calms his heart. When he opens his eyes, Arthur finds Tessia sitting on top of him. Tessia smiles and wishes him a good morning, but he pretends to ignore her, turning his face away and mumbling something as if she were a monster from his dreams. Tessia gets mad at the joke and tells him her grandfather is waiting outside. Since Arthur doesn't react, she decides to pull him out of bed by force, telling him to fix that messy hair. Arthur snaps back, saying that just a few minutes ago her hair looked like Medusa's. As she changes, Tessia asks if he really plans to stay there. Arthur replies that he's still thinking about it and calls her princess. She rolls her eyes. She's tired of him always calling her that, especially since they're already friends. To make that clear, she pinches his back and warns that she'll be in a truly bad mood if he uses that title again. Arthur comments that if that's the case, she's already mad and wonders if she could get even angrier than she already is. Later, once they're ready, the two leave the castle and spot a carriage. Alduin, Tessia's father, argues with Virion, asking him not to let Arthur stay there. Both Alduin and his wife still carry that old prejudice against humans. But Virion doesn't listen. He gets into the carriage and makes it clear that his decision is final. Arthur will stay. Tessia hears everything and once again steps forward to defend Arthur. She insists that they should let him stay. After all, he saved her life. Alduin even admits he's grateful, but says that doesn't change the fact that he doesn't want a human defiling that sacred land. Virion gets tired of his son's words. He interrupts the argument, reminding everyone who's in charge there, and orders Arthur and Tessia to get into the carriage. The vehicle heads toward the home of an old friend of Virion's. During the trip, Tessia falls asleep on Arthur's shoulder. Virion watches and comments that she woke up early because this is an important day. It will be decided whether Arthur will stay or leave. As he gently strokes his granddaughter's hair, Virion reveals that she has always lived in isolation. She never had real friends, as everyone around her just wanted to take advantage of her. Because of that, she learned to keep her distance from people. Hearing this, Arthur understands why Tessia gets so annoyed when he calls her princess. Virion then mentions that the only time he sees his granddaughter truly smile is when she's with Arthur. He sincerely thanks Arthur for their friendship, which makes Arthur realize how much Tessia values him. That gesture makes Arthur trust the old man even more. The carriage arrives at its destination. Arthur wonders who could be important enough to receive a personal visit from a former king. Virion, who until then had acted like a noble, bangs loudly on the door and yells, calling the homeowner an old witch. But there's no reply. He leans his ear against the door and is startled when it swings open forcefully. The woman replies that she hears just fine and doesn't need people yelling in her ears. Virion stands up and introduces her, Rinia Darkasan. He explains that she is a skilled mage, capable of granting Arthur's wish. Arthur gets excited and shows respect for her, which pleases her. She allows everyone to enter. Inside the house, Arthur looks around and sees only a water basin. Confused, he asks how she's going to help him contact his parents. Rinia explains that she is a seer, someone who can see parts of the past and the future. She tries to use her powers on Arthur, but is surprised when she can hardly see anything, stating that he is someone special. Arthur replies that he doesn't want to know the future. He just wants, somehow, to tell his parents that he's okay. Rinia instructs Arthur to look at the water's reflection in the bucket and think of his parents as clearly as possible. She uses her magic and, through the water, Arthur sees them. Alice and Reynolds are having lunch together, still mourning the loss of their son. It's Arthur's birthday. They recall the tragedy that led to their separation. Reynolds now works in city security, and the two live in a mansion, where Alice takes care of her pregnancy. As they cry, remembering their son, Arthur finally speaks to them. He says he's alive, that he's in the land of the elves and using special magic to communicate. He explains that he can't return yet because his body needs care, but pleads with them not to blame themselves for what happened, and ends by saying that he loves them very much. Alice, overwhelmed with emotion, hugs Reynolds, overjoyed to know their son is still alive. Arthur, with tears in his eyes, decides then and there that he'll never let his parents suffer like that again. He commits to becoming stronger and asks Virion to accept him as a disciple. Even though Virion agrees, things don't get easier. Alduin and his wife remain distrustful, and many elves don't want a human there. Virion and Tessia meet with Alduin to try and resolve it. Tessia argues that Arthur saved her life twice, and that if they still reject him, they're basically saying elves repay kindness with hostility. Alduin says he understands, but fears the people's reaction. Virion firmly declares that he would never accept a disciple if he didn't believe in him. Faced with that, and out of respect for his father and daughter, Alduin gives in. Virion reassures him, stating he'll take full responsibility if anything goes wrong. Alduin and his wife go to Arthur to welcome him. Alduin admits he was harsh, but says it's not Arthur's fault. It's the image humans have. Arthur notices the change. The same man who once didn't want him there now extends his hand in greeting. Alduin loves his family and will do what's necessary to see them happy. But Tessia wants more. She challenges her father to let her show Arthur the city. Since news of his stay has already spread, Alduin agrees. Happy, Tessia takes him through the streets and shows him the shops, the townspeople, and even convinces him to go to a snack and fruit shop. While walking, a young elf bumps into Arthur. Even after being shoved, Arthur apologizes and tries to leave, but the elf glares at him with disdain. He says Arthur has contaminated him for being human, and that even if Virion wants him there, he'll never be accepted. Arthur, who has learned to be cheekier with Tessia, decides to provoke him. The boy introduces himself as Faerith Ivsar II and says being around Arthur will only tarnish Tessia's image, offering to take her home. Tessia scolds him, but Arthur takes it further. He gives an exaggerated bow and purposely mispronounces the elf's family name, calling him the exact same grass-type Pokemon from Ash Ketchum's Pallet Town, Ivysaur. Tessia notices and bursts out laughing. Faerith understands the provocation and, trying to maintain his noble image, challenges Arthur to a duel. Challenging someone in public in that city is serious business. All the adults stop to watch. If Arthur refused, it would dishonor Virion and Tessia's family. So he accepts. Faerith asks Tessia to be the judge. She gives the signal to start, and Faerith charges, But Arthur, calm, lands a single blow, and the boy drops unconscious. Tessia isn't surprised. She had already warned that Arthur was strong. Since Ferrith didn't listen, now he has to face the consequences. She grabs Arthur's hand and they run off, smiling. Over time, Arthur gets used to Tessia's company. They stroll together, eat together, even study side by side. Whenever someone tries to intimidate him, Tessia is nearby to defend him. One afternoon, she joins him near a fence and asks about the training starting the next day. He seems thoughtful. She notices and asks if everything is okay. Arthur remembers what Virion told him earlier. He's alone in that land. Even so, he decided to stay and learn. Virion warned him it would be the hardest challenge of his life, but that if he endured, a bright future awaited. Arthur reaffirmed his desire and was told to, for now, ignore the pain in his mana core. Back in the present, Arthur looks at Tessia with determination. He says he's excited for the training, that he knows he's been through a lot, but nothing compares to what's coming. He's decided to move forward and get stronger. Tessia extends her hand and says she'll give her best too. Arthur asks why, and she replies that she wants to make sure he doesn't leave her behind. The next day, training begins. Arthur stands before Virion. Hearing the first instructions, he thinks to himself, life here moves at a different pace. In just a few days, he's already learned a lot. He's growing, and even without knowing exactly what's ahead, he feels the future will be exciting. Time passes, and Tessia learns to control her mana. One morning, she goes to wake Arthur, but he doesn't respond, so she decides to use mana to wake him up for real. He jumps up, startled, screaming, and asks why she couldn't have just called him gently. Even so, Tessia smiles, knowing that she tried to wake him up gently first. The two leave the house together and, on the way, notice Virion leaving the place, on his way to a meeting. Arthur gets curious about the reason for that meeting, but Tessia quickly changes the subject. With an excited look, she reveals that she made a hamburger especially for him. And before he can say anything, she warns him that he should be grateful that a beautiful woman prepared it for him. Arthur starts eating, and between bites, he jokingly asks, "What beautiful woman?" just to tease her. Tessia, of course, gets mad at the response. Then, the two head to the training field, where Virion watches them as they practice hand-to-hand combat. Eventually, he gives them wooden swords, making the training more intense. Arthur doesn't miss the chance to tease her again, calling her the beautiful Princess Tessia. But this time, she doesn't get annoyed. She just answers that she'll defeat him to teach him a lesson. After the sword training, Virion decides it's time to go further and introduces a new topic: magic. He explains that, upon awakening mana, a person can connect with one of the four main elements: fire, water, wind, or earth. This affinity usually varies depending on the race. For example, elves naturally have a connection with wind, earth, and water. Dwarves, on the other hand, are more skilled with earth and fire. And humans, well, they can have an affinity with any of the four elements, but usually master only one. The choice of the element is completely random. However, Virion talks about extremely rare cases of people who can control more than one element, which seems to be exactly Arthur's case. Tessia raises her hand and asks why Arthur doesn't train his body while using magic, like she did. Virion responds that he's still too weak. His mana core contains a beast will that is affecting the balance between his physical body and magical energy. And it's because of this imbalance that Arthur feels so much pain. Arthur begins to suspect that this beast will might have something to do with Sylvia, but he prefers not to jump to conclusions. Virion explains that, to deal with this beast will, it's first necessary to fully understand what's going on with his body. Tessia jokes, asking if he feels pain every time she hits him during training. Arthur admits she really doesn't hold back. Then he comments that anyone would feel pain being hit by her. Elves who awaken mana at 10 years old are considered prodigies, and Tessia awakened at only 9. That's why Tessia got stronger, and now, training alongside Arthur is a way for her to better develop this new power. Virion decides it's time for Arthur to try awakening the beast will inside him. To motivate him, he says that if everything goes well, Arthur will stop feeling pain and become a true beast tamer. Arthur, curious, sits as the ritual begins. Virion explains that he's going to light a flame inside Arthur's mana core, and all he'll feel is warmth in his body. Carefully, Virion transfers his own mana to Arthur, but something unexpected happens. Arthur screams in pain as a wave of mana explodes, throwing Virion and Tessia far away. After that, Arthur falls unconscious to the ground. As soon as he realizes what happened, Virion takes him back. When Arthur wakes up, Virion asks if he can identify the beast will inside him. Arthur answers that it was a dragon. Virion already suspected it. Since dragons are legendary creatures, he asks Arthur never to reveal this information, to avoid trouble with dangerous people. With the beast will awakened, Virion tells Arthur he'll be able to return home in 4 months, which surprises him, since he thought he would stay there for 2 more years. The reason for the change is a cultural exchange event between the 3 kingdoms, so the teleportation portal to the human city will be opened. Realizing that the day he saw Virion leaving for a meeting was actually about handling this exchange, Arthur gets emotional that he'll finally be able to see his parents. He asks how Tessia will react to the news, but Virion assures him that she already knows. Her parents told her. That night, the egg he received from Sylvia starts to crack, and Arthur, scared, doesn't know what to expect. When the shell breaks, an adorable baby appears. Arthur is instantly enchanted, but soon gets bitten on the arm. He thinks it was aggression, but finds out that the baby only did it to cast a magical seal. Now, Arthur can hear her voice, even if everything she says sounds like a bunch of nonsense. Still, he's overjoyed to be able to hear her. He decides to name her Sylvie, in honor of her mother. He looks at the seal on his arm, still not understanding what it means, but can't believe he's now a dad at just 8 years old. Soon after, he falls asleep. The next day, Tessia walks into the room as usual to wake him up. Since he sleeps like a rock, she pulls off the blanket. When she sees Sylvie, she screams. Arthur wakes up startled. Tessia is just thrilled. She picks up Sylvie like a baby. The two head to the training field, and Tessia does everything she can to make Sylvie like her. But Sylvie seems interested only in Arthur. When they arrive, Virion nearly has a heart attack upon seeing that baby dragon. He says she was probably born now because he fully assimilated the beast will. Looking at Sylvie, Arthur gets worried. Even without him saying anything, Virion reassures him. No one would believe a real dragon exists, so they just have to say she's a rare magical beast. Virion announces the start of training and says that now that Arthur is a beast tamer, it's time to train that too. And the best way to do that is with a battle. Virion assimilates his beast will, a shadow panther. The creature's presence is terrifying. The sound, the energy, and the darkness it emits leave Arthur and Tessia terrified. To make it worse, Virion demands that Arthur fight him, but Arthur can barely see him. In that form, Virion vanishes and reappears in fractions of a second. Arthur gives up the fight, accepting defeat. Virion returns to his elf form and explains that the Shadow Panther grants instinctive control over the wind and also nullifies sound, which is an advanced spell. But in return, it's very exhausting to maintain that form. After that, Virion picks up a wooden sword and continues training as usual. Time passes, days, weeks, maybe months. Arthur improves a lot to the point of fighting Virion in his beast form. As the portal opening approaches, Tessia begins to feel the weight of the farewell. During a festival in town, she can't even enjoy herself, knowing her friend is leaving. Arthur tries to cheer her up, asking her to at least smile. While walking through the city, a boy bumps into Arthur and looks at him strangely for being human. It's Faerith, the same elf who once challenged Arthur and lost with a single blow. He approaches and asks if Arthur remembers him. Arthur honestly replies that he doesn't. Faerith insists, saying he wants a rematch because now he's confident he can win. But the result of the fight is the same as the first. Arthur knocks him down with a single hit. Tessia tells Arthur who he is, and Arthur finally remembers, offering a handshake. Surprisingly, Faerith accepts. His friends say Faerith just wanted to be Arthur's friend. They talk, and Arthur finds out that Faerith will also participate in the exchange. Faerith reveals that all the children of nobles will go. Arthur didn't know that, since Tessia hadn't said if she was going. When he looks at her, Faerith comments that they won't let the delicate princess get lost again. The word delicate definitely doesn't match Tessia. And to prove it, she hits Faerith hard, sending him flying, Team Rocket style, blasting off at the speed of light. He faints instantly. It was the first time Arthur saw a princess knock someone out like that. Without thinking twice, he pulls her away. Once far, he comments that a princess shouldn't hit her subjects. But Tessia doesn't care. She's confused, full of thoughts, especially because Arthur is leaving. And Faerith ended up saying exactly what he shouldn't. She complains that Arthur is treating her like her father, and on top of that, he's leaving. She calls him an old man and runs off, locking herself in her room to cry. Arthur, realizing how upset she is, climbs through the window carrying the glowing flowers she loves. She sees him and goes to him. Arthur puts a flower behind her ear and invites her for a walk. They walk through the forest, even with all the warnings not to go there. Arthur lights a campfire and the two sit down to talk. Tessia starts getting sleepy but wants to enjoy every minute. They talk about the human world until she falls asleep. The next morning, Arthur gets ready to leave. Virian gives him a compass with the Aerolith symbol. That way, if he ever wants to return, he'll know the way. He also casually mentions that Arthur should be more careful when going out with Tessia at night. Arthur just apologizes. He asks about Tessia before leaving, but figures she's too upset to say goodbye. When he's already in front of the portal with the other youths, Tessia appears running. She trips on the way, and Arthur runs to help her. She hugs him tightly, asking him not to forget to eat. He hugs her back, saying he'll miss her. With tears in her eyes, Tessia says she will too. The portal finally opens. The farewell is heartbreaking. After a long journey, Arthur finally returns to the human realm. He gets emotional, knowing he'll see his parents again. He walks to the house, takes a deep breath, and knocks on the door. A little girl appears. Upon seeing her, Arthur immediately recognizes her. It's his sister. His parents soon appear at the door, calling the girl Eleanor. When they see Arthur there, they are speechless. He smiles with a light heart and says, "I'm back." When Arthur appears in front of them, Alice and Reynolds simply can't believe what they're seeing. Without thinking twice, they run and hug him tightly, full of joy to have their son back. Alice starts crying, unable to hold back her emotions, and little Eleanor quickly asks her not to cry like that. Looking at her, Arthur immediately realizes that little girl is his little sister. And just by looking into those eyes, he already feels like he would do anything to protect her. Arthur then kneels in front of her, introduces himself, and sees how surprised she is to finally meet the brother she's heard so much about. As soon as they enter the house, Alice wastes no time and starts bombarding her son with questions, wanting to know everything about the time he was away. Arthur assures her that he's fine, while Reynolds, laughing, asks her to take it easy and stop overwhelming the boy. Meanwhile, Eleanor watches everything, a bit sulky, feeling a little jealous of seeing her parents giving him so much attention. Alice then calls her and explains that Arthur is the older brother from the stories she always hears before bed. Arthur smiles and says he was really looking forward to finally meeting his little sister. At that moment, Sylvie wastes no time and jumps straight into Eleanor's lap, breaking the emotional atmosphere a bit. Once everyone manages to calm down, Arthur starts telling his family everything he's been through since they were separated. But when it comes to Sylvia, he chooses not to say anything for now, revealing that now, while he's still weak, could put everyone at risk. So, he only says that he survived the fall thanks to luck and the unconscious use of magic. He goes on to tell how he ended up saving Tessia and how he spent the following years in the Elven Kingdom training and taking care of the illness. He also talks about Sylvie, saying that she's just a magical beast he adopted after finding her mother too weak to survive. His parents feel relieved, trusting every word. Suddenly, Reynolds, curious, asks what stage Arthur's mana core is at. Instantly, Alice scolds him, complaining that this isn't the kind of question to ask right now, with their son just having returned. Arthur laughs, changes the subject, and asks what his father's current job is. Reynolds proudly replies that he now works as a security instructor at one of the city's largest auction houses. Right after, Reynolds shares that 2 years ago, his mana core advanced to dark orange, which is considered an intermediate level. Arthur is quite impressed, realizing how much his father worked hard to get there. But deep down, he also knows that he himself is already at the light red stage, which, in practice, is just one step below what Reynolds has reached. When Reynolds realizes that, he gets completely flustered. Without thinking, he blurts out a "damn," and little Eleanor starts repeating the word non-stop. Right away, Alice gives him that classic scolding, reminding him that she already warned him to stop saying those things in front of their daughter. Even so, Reynolds can't help himself and, with a smile on his face, challenges Arthur to a duel to test how strong he's become. Suddenly, the door opens, and some people enter the house. Reynolds quickly steps up to introduce them. This is Vincent Helstia, the manager of the auction house where he works, and also the owner of this house. The woman next to him is Tabitha, his wife. Arthur greets them with full respect, thanking them for everything they've done for his family. Vincent is so surprised by the boy's manners that he even jokes, asking if he's really Reynolds' son. Right after, Tabitha introduces her daughter, Lilia, mentioning that they are the same age and could become good friends. Lilia, however, seems much more interested in Sylvie and quickly asks if she can pet her. Reynolds then comments to Vincent that he and Arthur are going to fight in the yard and invites him to watch. Vincent is a bit surprised but agrees and goes along with everyone. When he gets there and hears that Arthur's mana core is at the light red stage, he's left speechless. Alice then explains that Arthur has always had an absurdly easy time learning and that there's no reason to lie about it. Even so, Vincent finds it really hard to believe. After all, even the greatest prodigies at the famous Xyrus Academy at 11 or 12 years old barely managed to reach deep red. And Arthur, at only 8, is already at light red. Meanwhile, Arthur and Reynolds finish warming up. In an instant, the two charge at each other. Arthur blocks his father's strikes and tries to counter-attack. However, Reynolds easily defends and warns that he's going to need more than that if he wants to win. But Arthur surprises him, using a kick that manages to push Reynolds back. Impressed, Reynolds warns that now he's going to stop holding back. He concentrates mana into his fist, which starts catching fire. Arthur is surprised because he knows that, in this world, every mage is born with an affinity for a specific element. For conjurers, this is much easier to identify and use. But for augmenters like Reynolds, mastering an element requires a lot of training and perception. All of a sudden, Reynolds envelops his entire body in fire mana and charges straight at Arthur. Arthur tries to defend himself but gets pressured. At that moment, Arthur remembers his past life when he used something called Kai, which worked similarly to the mana here. But unlike this world, those who mastered Kai could choose any element. Since he was reborn here, bringing with him the memories of his past life, Arthur has been able to control the 4 basic elements thanks to training in both lives. He gathers mana into his fists, which start glowing with an intense light, leaving everyone shocked. He charges at Reynolds, and when their fists collide, the impact is so strong that it pushes both of them back. Reynolds then comes at him more aggressively, landing a direct hit on his son. But Arthur doesn't give up and charges in again. He remembers his training with Virion, how he quickly learned to master fire, and how, thanks to that, the old elf decided to push him beyond his own limits. With that memory fresh in his mind, Arthur makes his mana explode, now transforming it into electricity. Lightning starts sparking from his body, burning the grass around him. Reynolds is completely stunned because he realizes Arthur has mastered an even more advanced version of fire magic. Arthur then says that this isn't everything. Suddenly, he manipulates the water from the fountain, launching a direct attack at Reynolds' back. Everyone watching is frozen as they see Arthur using 2 elements at the same time. Reynolds barely manages to dodge, and as soon as the attack ends, Arthur cancels everything and his father runs over to hug him. Proud, he asks where and when his son learned that. Arthur replies that he learned it recently, but admits he still can't fully control it. While Alice handles it all like it's completely normal, Vincent and Tabitha are left speechless, already considering Arthur a true genius. Soon after, they go back inside and sit at the table. Vincent then comments to Reynolds that Arthur has a brilliant future ahead. Reynolds agrees, saying he's known that ever since the day Arthur awakened his mana core at 3 years old, and destroyed the whole house in the process. Vincent's eyes widen when he hears this, and while Reynolds laughs proudly, Vincent loses his balance and falls off his chair. After pulling himself together, Vincent makes a suggestion. They should consider enrolling Arthur at Xyrus Academy. Reynolds is surprised and wants to make sure he's serious, since Xyrus is simply the best magic academy on the continent. Tabitha immediately supports the idea and even says they can pay for the tuition, because, seeing Arthur's talent, there's no doubt it's worth investing in him. Alice, however, gets nervous and says they don't even know if the academy would accept their son. But Vincent replies confidently that he knows the headmaster very well and can handle it. At that moment, Arthur decides to speak up. After all, they're talking about his life, and he also wants to have a say in the decision. He explains that he just reunited with his family and doesn't want to be away from them anytime soon. Vincent understands, and Arthur politely excuses himself, saying he's really tired after the fight. He starts walking away, but Lilia suddenly shows up, following him. She comments that he's going the wrong way and asks him to follow her, promising to take him somewhere much better. Lilia leads him to the basement kitchen, where she casually chats with the staff, ordering several plates of meat. One of the ladies working there comments that she should take it easy because she's gaining some weight. Lilia immediately snaps back, annoyed, saying that's not true, that she's just a healthy girl in her growth phase. Arthur watches it all, surprised. Until now, she seemed so quiet. One of the maids notices and explains that whenever she's stressed, Lilia shows up there to eat. Arthur gets curious and then finds out that, actually, Lilia is under a lot of pressure because her parents really want her to awaken as a mage. But since neither of them has any talent for magic, the chances of that happening are pretty low. Later that night, Alice and Reynolds go to Arthur's room to talk a bit more. They tell him how happy they are that he's back and how proud they are of him. They also say they believe that one day he'll become a great mage. They say good night. But before they leave, Alice asks for a kiss on the cheek. The next day, as soon as he wakes up, Arthur runs to the living room because he finds out that some old friends are there to see him. They're his parents' former adventure companions, known as the Twin Horns. They're super happy to see him again. Angela hugs Arthur so tight he can barely breathe, and right after, he exchanges a fist bump with Durden. Adam and Helen start arguing, as always, while greeting him. And out of nowhere, Jasmine starts checking Arthur over, wanting to make sure he's really in one piece. As soon as she's done, she hugs him, apologizes, and admits she feels like all of this is her fault. After this emotional reunion, the group starts telling Arthur about their recent missions in faraway places. And, as always, they end up arguing over silly things. Arthur, watching it all, realizes there's still so much to learn about this world, and that being an adventurer is a great way to do that. But when he looks at his family, he feels like he's not ready to be away from them again. Sometime later, while Arthur was focused on his meditation, something incredible happened. Time simply froze around him. But it demanded a lot from him, and he could only maintain it for a few seconds before running completely out of strength. It was at that moment that Sylvie appeared, and just the fact that she was there, with all her cuteness, was enough to give Arthur the push to keep going. He couldn't resist and quickly picked her up, hugging her tightly for always being by his side. However, it didn't take long for him to realize that she was smelling. Pretty bad, to be honest. Without thinking twice, Arthur decided she needed a good bath. He took Sylvie to the bathtub and placed her there, even though she made it very clear with every attempt to escape that she was not happy about it. While trying to calm her down, Arthur explained that living in the luxurious Hellstay house, they couldn't afford to look or be dirty. And speaking of the Hellstays, something was stuck in his mind. The conversations he overheard from the maids. They commented that Vincent and Tabitha's greatest wish was to see Lilia awaken as a mage, even though they themselves weren't mages. For now, Arthur focused back on Sylvie, who was clearly complaining about being in the water for so long. He took her out of the bathtub, dried her off, and even joked that she seemed even lighter after the bath. Suddenly, Alice arrived with everyone else and, without wasting time, announced that it was time for Arthur to get ready. She took him to the most flashy barber in town. As soon as the barber looked at him, he immediately said that Arthur was like a raw diamond, but assured him that he didn't need to worry because he was going to polish him and reveal all the shine hidden inside. When the job was done, Arthur walked out of there looking like a whole new person. He looked simply amazing. Tabitha even commented, half satisfied, that now he was presentable enough to enter their auction house. Alice then explained that the place often received members of royalty, and that was exactly why they had to take such good care of the boy's appearance before taking him there. Instead of feeling confident with all this, hearing those things just made Arthur feel even more uncomfortable, as if before that he had looked awful. Continuing the outing, Tabitha wanted to show Arthur the city of Xyrus. And in that relaxed atmosphere, Eleanor, Arthur's little sister, joked, asking him to be her escort. Lilia, who didn't let it slide, immediately said that Eleanor used to cling to her before Arthur showed up. Then, looking at him, she admitted that he looked really handsome in those new clothes and accidentally revealed that she had been the one who picked them before walking away. The group headed to the market, where Alice took the chance to buy a bunch of new clothes for Arthur. After spending quite a while shopping, they stayed in the city centre, having fun near the king's statue. Until, out of nowhere, a group of students from the Xyrus Academy of Magic appeared and threw something at Arthur, full of attitude, as if they were better than everyone else. Arthur simply ignored it. He didn't want any trouble, so they just walked away. Later, he learned from Lilia that those students were treated almost like royalty, all because they were mages. But honestly, Arthur couldn't care less about that. Continuing the stroll, he suddenly felt a strange aura coming from a shop. Curious, he walked over and found several shelves full of beast cores. Tabitha explained that those were magic cores extracted from beasts, used to greatly increase the strength of whoever possessed them. Arthur already knew what they were, but had no idea they were sold in stores. That wasn't common at all in the Elven Kingdom. Tabitha continued explaining, saying that, in very rare cases, some cores have a beast will inside them. This makes them insanely expensive. Just to give an idea, the cheapest ones cost around 100 gold coins. According to Alice, that was enough to live more than 200 years in the village where they used to live. Tabitha said that she and her husband planned to put some of those cores in the next auction, and noticing the interest in Arthur's eyes, she promised to let him take a look at the cores, which, according to her, was a huge honor. Arthur pretended to be excited, but deep down, he knew he was already more than satisfied with the beast will he possessed. Suddenly, he noticed that Lilia looked down. Tabitha also noticed the reason right away. In fact, Lilia really wanted one of those cores. It made sense since her family dealt with them all the time, and she wanted to use one to try to awaken her mana. But Tabitha quickly made it clear that things didn't work like that. Besides, spending that much money on a child didn't make any sense. Lilia still tried to insist, suggesting they could look for a cheaper one somewhere else. Even so, Tabitha stood firm and said they weren't going to discuss it any further. After that, they all headed to a restaurant for lunch. But Arthur couldn't enjoy it since Lilia was visibly upset. He understood perfectly what was going on with her. After all, her father, Vincent, placed a huge burden of expectations on her, and that was exactly why she was so determined to awaken her mana. Arthur wanted to help. After all, her family had done a lot for his. But when he looked around, he noticed she wasn't there anymore. He went looking for her and ended up finding Lilia in a weapon shop. She was alone, trying to buy a cheap beast core using her savings. Arthur stopped her immediately, saying that even if she bought one, that wouldn't make her awaken mana. Still, Lilia wouldn't give up. She vented, saying how unfair it was to be a child without talent, unlike him, who was special, someone way above average. While they were arguing, Lilia accidentally bumped into one of the Xyrus Academy students. Right away, she apologized, but the boy and two of his friends weren't willing to let it go. They started threatening Lilia, saying she deserved punishment for being, in their words, insolent. Not even the shop owner had the courage to intervene. Arthur, who was already ready to solve that with magic, was interrupted right when Tabitha walked in, immediately ending the commotion. She introduced herself and made it clear who she was, the head of the Hellsteer family. As soon as they found out who she was, the students gave up the idea of causing more trouble. After all, the Hellsteer family made large donations to the academy and had a lot of influence. Even so, they didn't miss the chance to provoke Lilia one more time before leaving. On the way back home, Tabitha and Alice told Vincent everything. He was relieved that the fight ended before Arthur split the three in half. And even so, he took the opportunity to tell both Lilia and Arthur that they needed to be more careful from now on, especially Arthur, since he was about to start at Xyrus Academy soon. When she heard that, Lilia felt terrible. In her head, it seemed like Vincent was giving up on her and replacing her with Arthur, like she was a bad investment. She was really upset, and before anyone could say anything, she ran away, screaming that she hated both Arthur and Vincent. Despite that whole uncomfortable scene, Arthur didn't let it affect him. He knew Lilia didn't really mean what she said, she was just hurt. Later, he went to her room door to call her for dinner. He knocked several times, but no one answered. That's when Sylvie noticed a staff member approaching and got Arthur's attention. The man said that Lilia wasn't in her room, and then led Arthur to where she was. Meanwhile, Lilia was lost in her own thoughts. She was thinking about everything that had happened so far, and was more and more convinced that her parents were disappointed in her. She remembered when she was little, and how her dad always said he wanted to see her become a mage. Back then, all she ever wanted was to make them proud. But unfortunately, life wasn't going the way she imagined. She kept asking herself when, after all, her magic would awaken. She also remembered her mother's words, saying she didn't need to rush, and how her father, even seeing her slow progress, never gave up, always making sure to donate to the academy, and saying that no matter when she awakened, she would be accepted. The problem was that hearing her father say the same things to Arthur, who had arrived so recently, simply broke her heart. She felt like a failure. And to make it worse, remembering the academy students saying that she would only be able to get in by buying her spot made it all even heavier. Arthur showed up, pulling her out of that whirlwind of thoughts. He said her parents were really worried and that they cared a lot about her. He felt bad, thinking that, in a way, he was also one of the reasons she was feeling like that. For a moment, he even thought about apologizing, but realized it wouldn't help. Sometimes apologies don't solve anything, especially when, deep down, you know you didn't do anything wrong. Lilia understood that, and to his surprise, she was the one who apologized first. She said she was really sorry for the things she said and didn't mean to make him feel that way. She admitted that she always felt frustrated for not being able to awaken magic, and that, when he showed up with all that talent, she felt completely left behind. It even seemed like all her father's attention went straight to him. Arthur explained that it wasn't like that. He gently touched her face, and little by little, she started to smile. He told her that when he was separated from his parents, there was also a girl who always made him feel better. Then, he took the glowing flower Tessia had shown him and showed it to Lilia, who was enchanted by it. Arthur said that Vincent was just excited, nothing more. It was a sign that he trusted her and believed in her potential. He knew pretty words wouldn't be enough. If he really wanted to help, he needed to do something real. So, he asked if she really wanted to learn magic. Lilia confirmed without thinking twice. Later, Arthur said that he had sent Lilia to the place where he himself had learned magic. As soon as Vincent found out, he was furious, even knowing that Arthur only wanted to help. He thought that, at the very least, Arthur should have asked for permission first. Arthur replied that it was her decision, and that if they got involved, maybe she would give up. He handed over the letter she had written, where she apologized, said she felt useless, and that she would only come back after awakening, no matter how long it took. Right then, Vincent fell to his knees. That's when he realized how wrong he had been. For so long, he made her believe that being a mage was the only way to have a decent future. And now, she believed that without it, she had no worth. Crying, he said that even if she never awakened magic, she would still be his beloved daughter, and would always be valuable to them. When he heard that, Arthur called out Lilia's name, asking if she could hear. She showed up and revealed that it was all just a prank. Actually, she had never left. The whole thing was Arthur's idea so that she would realize how important she was to her parents. She apologized for the prank, but Arthur took the blame, saying it was his suggestion. After all, he knew very well how painful it is when a child disappears. He knew because his own parents had gone through that, and he promised that he wouldn't joke about that kind of thing anymore. Vincent finally realized that he had gotten too carried away with the idea that being a mage was all that mattered. He apologized to Arthur for wanting him to go to the academy, even after reuniting with his parents so recently. Then he went to his daughter, hugged her along with Tabitha, and firmly stated that no matter what happened, she would always be his daughter, and didn't need to go to the academy if she didn't want to. Lilia smiled and replied that, even so, she did want to become a mage and go to the academy, no matter how long it took. Now that the weight had been lifted from her shoulders, Arthur started preparing everything to help her awaken her mana. He asked Lilia and Eleanor to sit down and explained that breathing is one of the fastest ways to connect with mana. He told them to close their eyes, take a deep breath, and pay attention, because soon they would see a light appearing in the darkness. And, just as he expected, Eleanor soon commented that she had seen a light, but it quickly disappeared. He knew it was because she stopped breathing properly, so he asked her to keep going. Lilia, on the other hand, started wondering why she wasn't seeing anything. Arthur came closer, placed his hands on their backs, and tried to use his mana to create a connection. That's when Lilia suddenly started seeing several glowing dots. She said it looked a lot like the flower he had shown her before. Her parents, emotional, were overjoyed. Right away, they started planning a party to celebrate this achievement. During the party, Arthur explained to Lilia that she would need to train for about 2 or 3 years until her energy stabilized. He said it would be hard work, but it was essential that she dedicated herself every day. She got so excited that, with a smile on her face, she asked what element she would be able to use. Arthur just laughed, amused by all her excitement. And that's how we finish episode 9 of the anime The Beginning After the End. If you want the continuation of the next episodes, leave it in the comments. See ya, and until next time.